There's a quiet paradox in the modern world, a strange affliction that touches nearly everyone, yet remains spoken of only in whispers. The feeling, that hollow, gnawing sensation of being unproductive. It is a feeling that stands in stark contrast to the loud, dazzling world outside our window, a world that seems to be perpetually in motion, eternally doing. You see this world everywhere, in the scrolling feeds, the flashing headlines, the manic energy of people rushing from one impressive task to the next. The world shouts, contribute, create, optimize, grow. And in the middle of this deafening chorus, there is you, sitting with a perfectly blank screen, or a half-read book, or simply staring at the ceiling. And the silence of your own non-action feels like a profound moral failure. It's easy to assume that this sensation, this paralysis, this mental fog is merely laziness, that it's a simple lack of willpower, a failure of discipline, a flaw in your personal operating system. We are quick to dismiss it, to scold ourselves, to believe the surface-level explanation. But that, my friend, is not the full picture. It's an easy answer, but it's a lie. Beneath the surface of this seeming inactivity, there is an entire psychology at play, a complex tapestry of deep-seated fears, overstimulated minds, and subtle, often profound, internal conflicts. The feeling of being unproductive isn't the cause of your pause, you see. It is, more often than not, the symptom of a deeper exhaustion, a quiet intelligence, or a hidden self-preservation instinct trying to protect you from a world that has simply asked too much. Let's begin here, with the emotional core of the matter: overstimulation. We live in a society that has weaponized the dopamine loop. Our brains are designed to seek novelty and reward, and our digital environment has become a relentless 24/7 casino of tiny, instantaneous gratifications. Every notification, every email, every tiny piece of information that flashes before our eyes is a microscopic hit of dopamine. Now, think about what true, deep, meaningful productivity requires. It requires focus, sustained, quiet, often uncomfortable engagement with a single complex task. It requires a descent into the deep-sea trenches of your own attention, where the waters are still and the light is dim. But your brain has been trained over years of constant digital conditioning to prefer the surface, the fast-moving, brightly lit, shallow water of quick hits. When you sit down to work on something meaningful, a project, an important email, a personal creation, you are essentially asking a brain that is addicted to fast food to sit down and meticulously prepare a 7-course meal. The brain resists. It is bored. It says, this is not fast enough. This does not feel instantly rewarding. The resulting feeling is not laziness. It is the anxiety of the withdrawal. It is the mind screaming for the next quick fix, while the deeper self knows the quick fix will never satisfy the true hunger. This is the first reframe. Your feeling of being unproductive may not be a weakness of character, but rather a sign of a hypersensitive nervous system reacting to an unnatural environment. Your mind is overwhelmed, and the paralysis is a necessary defense mechanism, a system-wide shutdown to prevent a deeper, more catastrophic burnout. The noise of the world is too loud, and your silence is a necessary retreat. The next layer of this psychology involves the insidious concept of performance identity. For many of us, our self-worth has become tragically entangled with our output. We're not just people who do things. We are our products. We are the GPA, the job title, the size of the portfolio, the number of tasks checked off the list. This isn't just an external pressure, it's a deep, internalized script. When you feel unproductive, you are not just failing a task. You feel like you are failing to be a good person. This is where imposter syndrome subtly morphs into procrastination. If your self-worth is entirely predicated on a perfect outcome, the pressure to begin a task becomes almost unbearable. If I don't try, I can't fail. If I don't finish, I can still harbor the fantasy that the project, when completed, will be brilliant. The procrastination, the sitting, the staring, the seemingly wasted time is a defense mechanism of the fragile ego. It is the ego saying, I will protect us from the judgment that comes with an imperfect result. The feeling of unproductiveness in this light is the cognitive dissonance between the self you are, a flawed, complex human being, and the self you feel you must present, a perfect, high-performing machine. The gap between those two selves creates a debilitating psychological friction, and the result is stasis. You can't move forward because you can't reconcile the person who must fail with the person who must succeed perfectly. This leads to the micro scenario of the perfectly planned yet perpetually untouched to-do list. You spend an hour meticulously crafting 10 essential tasks. The list itself is a beautiful, productive thing. And then you feel exhausted. Why? Because the list has become a monument to your failure. The act of planning, the low-effort dopamine hit, tricks your brain into feeling productive, while the execution, the high-effort challenge, remains untouched. You've already done the emotional labor of planning, and the well is dry before the real work even begins. Now, let's turn to the concept of meaning and authenticity. This is perhaps the most profound reason for your pause. We are constantly pressured to engage in instrumental action, doing things not for their inherent value, but because they serve as a means to an end. We post the picture to get the likes. We attend the meeting to get the approval. We work on the project to get the promotion. The entire structure of much of modern work and life is built on this chain of external reward. But what if your mind, your deep, quiet self, is rebelling against the lack of intrinsic meaning? The feeling of unproductiveness often surfaces most acutely when we are forced to perform tasks that feel hollow, inauthentic, or merely designed for digital applause. You look at the task and your soul whispers, why? Why am I doing this? Is this truly valuable to me, or is it valuable to the audience I imagine watching me? The resistance isn't laziness. It's an authenticity crisis. Consider the simple detail of making a cup of coffee. The pressure to be productive today might demand that you instantly jump into the day's work. But you stand at the counter and slowly grind the beans, watching the steam rise, smelling the aroma. This is a moment of process. It is inherently meaningful. The slow action, the quiet concentration, this feels productive, even though it doesn't move a single business metric. The unproductivity you fear is often simply a desperate craving for more process-oriented living, more time spent being and experiencing, and less time spent relentlessly achieving. The reframe here is radical. Perhaps your stasis, your resistance to the busy work, is a sign of your high emotional intelligence, a barometer signaling that the tasks before you do not align with your true values or your deepest needs for meaning. Your inner self is telling you, I will not move until the movement is worth it. That is not a sign of weakness, it is a sign of integrity. The shadow of the perfect other also looms large in the psychology of unproductiveness.
In the past, you compared yourself to a handful of peers. Now you compare your unedited, unquieted, complicated internal life to the curated, hyper-productive, highlight reel lives of thousands. This creates a state of perpetual, low-grade social comparison anxiety. This comparison creates what psychologists call a hedonic treadmill of achievement. You finish a task, you get the tiny hit of reward, and then, almost instantly, your eyes land on someone who has done it bigger, better, or faster. The finish line constantly recedes. There is no moment of quiet, sustained satisfaction. The resulting unproductiveness is the mind's way of saying, I refuse to join this race. The anxiety of perpetual comparison is so exhausting. The emotional labor of keeping up appearances is so high that the mind opts out entirely. It retreats into the safe, quiet, non-judgmental territory of non-action. It is a protective fortress against the relentless, impossible demands of comparison culture. Think of it this way. Your mind has calculated the return on investment for its energy. If the energy expended on a task leads not to genuine fulfillment, but merely to the immediate crushing pressure of the next higher expectation, then the rational choice, from the perspective of self-preservation, is to save the energy. Your inner child, who just wants to draw for the pure joy of it, throws a tantrum and refuses to draw at all, because the adult world has demanded the drawing must now be a masterpiece worthy of a gallery.
And finally, let's talk about the silent killer, deep emotional exhaustion. We often look at unproductiveness and assume the cause is a lack of physical energy, but it is frequently a deficit of emotional or cognitive energy. Every decision you make, from what to wear, to what to eat, to what email to answer first, consumes a finite resource known as ego depletion. Now, layer on top of this the enormous, invisible weight of simply existing in a complex world, managing relationships, navigating complex social dynamics, processing the constant stream of upsetting news, and performing the necessary emotional labor of being a polite, engaged, functional adult. When you sit down to work and the screen is blank, and the feeling of unproductivity washes over you, it's not because you lack the skill or the time. It's because the internal gas tank is registering empty, not from the last 2 hours of work, but from the last 2 weeks, months, or years of carrying invisible burdens. The paralysis is the brain's final, non-negotiable demand for a rest that is not just physical, but psychological. The tragedy is that we often use the feeling of unproductiveness as a weapon to deny ourselves this very rest. We feel guilty, so we spend the downtime worrying about the work we should be doing, which drains even more cognitive energy, creating a cruel, self-perpetuating loop of exhaustion. We call it resting, but we are simply performing anxious inactivity, a state where the body is still, but the mind is running a frantic marathon of self-reproach. The final, compassionate reframe is this: your apparent unproductiveness is not a lack of drive, but a desperate, valid plea for unconditional rest. A rest that is granted not because you have earned it by checking off tasks, but because you are a human being who is intrinsically worthy of peace. So, the next time you find yourself staring at that blank screen or sitting in that quiet, empty room, let the sharp sting of self-judgment soften, just for a moment. Do not reach for the quick fix of distraction, and do not immediately scold yourself into action. Instead, let your mind become still and listen carefully to the silence. Ask yourself a more compassionate question. What is this resistance protecting me from? Is it protecting me from the crushing anxiety of the dopamine loop? Is it shielding my fragile sense of self-worth from the judgment of an impossible standard? Is it a wise internal compass telling me that the task before me is fundamentally meaningless and there is a deeper, more authentic calling I should be listening to? Or is it simply a plea for the unconditional rest that a tired mind has earned? A rest that is due regardless of your output. Maybe the feeling of being unproductive is not a flaw you need to eliminate, but a mirror you need to look into. It's a profound sign, a validation, in fact, that you are a deep, complex, and emotionally intelligent person who refuses to be reduced to an unthinking, perpetually performing machine. Maybe that's what true self-preservation looks like in the modern age. The quiet courage to simply pause, breathe, and wait for a movement that is truly worth making.